welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 291, and today's date is February 15th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief for this Saturday. Let's get right into the economic collapse news, and what do we know? Well, we understand that the United States, Eurozone, Australia, each one of these countries is piling on debt, and as they continually pile on debt, their revenue that they bring in cannot sustain the debt load that they have. And of course, many of the countries are implementing austerity where they're laying off people, and when you lay off people, they're not making an income and they can't contribute to the government's revenue, and this makes it harder for the government to make the payments on the debt. So it really becomes unsustainable. That's what normally happens. But the United States, they have a printing press, so the government continually borrows. And right now, the government suspended the debt ceiling. So right now, the government has the ability to spend whatever they want. And they'll keep doing this. And as they keep spending and borrowing from the Fed to pay for all the social programs, to pay for the interest on the debt, this debt is going to rise very, very quickly. And they are looking for ways to bring in revenue. And this is why they have FACTA, where they're going across to all different other nations looking for Americans who are making money to bring in revenue to the United States. Even if you have a passport in the United States but you're working overseas, they still want to tax you money. They want to look in the bank accounts that are overseas, tax that money, and if you decide you want to leave the United States, there is a bill right now where they would like to take 30% of your wealth before you leave the United States. So they're looking everywhere for revenue. They tried with Obamacare, and of course they put it out there that everyone's going to get health insurance so everyone can be healthy. It doesn't matter. But what they really did was they talked to the insurance companies. They raised the premium so everyone can be involved. They raised the deductibles so most of the people won't even use their health insurance during that year. They'll just be paying premiums. And they were hoping that the youth of America would just pay for their health insurance. But as you know, most people are healthy when you're younger, and they wouldn't actually use their health insurance because they have a huge deductible, and maybe they go to the doctor once or twice, but they would never reach their deductible and they would just be paying in with their premiums. Well, this isn't happening, and there are many hidden taxes within Obamacare, and also there are penalties if you do not take Obamacare. So this isn't really happening. They're not getting the response they wanted. They're not getting the income they thought they were going to get. So now they're going down a different route, and this has to do with climate change. And the whole purpose for the government coming out there saying that, we have a climate change problem, things are really bad, this is why you see snow, which is ridiculous, this is why you see droughts, this is why you see this. It all has to do with climate change. But really what they're setting up for is they're setting it up to tax us. They're going to tax on pretty much everything. It's going to be a carbon tax. They're going to tax you on how many miles you drive to work. They're going to tax you on how much energy you use in your house. This is why they have the smart meters. They can monitor everything. So if you use more energy than someone else, you'll be taxed more. And they'll look around and they'll just add these taxes up. And this is what's happening right now. Obama went to California to talk about the drought and climate change. And basically what has happened is the White House science assistant, John Holdren, came out and said weather practically everywhere is being caused by climate change, which is pretty much absolutely ridiculous. But they're building this up, and again, we have to look at what they're actually doing. Bringing in tax money into the government, they're not going to use this for anything that has to do with the climate. They're going to use it to pay the debt on, because of the debt that the government is continually accumulating. They're going to use this money to pay for the social programs. They're going to use this money to pay for the wars and give aid to other countries. This is really what it is, because they don't have the revenue right now from the American people, because the American people are unemployed and underemployed, and that money is just not coming in, is just not enough. And right now, as part of the administration's broad effort to fight global warming, President Obama will propose in 2015 budget a new $1 billion climate resilience fund. What they're setting up for right now is they're setting it up so they can tax every single person. This is what they're going to end up doing. They want your money, and they're going to do it any way they can. Again, they're going to try to prop up the system as long as they possibly can. They don't want the system to die. Why? Because they are making millions and millions of dollars from everyone right now. They're making a fortune in the market, but they understand that they only have a certain time frame where they can keep this going, because realistically, they need to bring in more revenue within the United States. They have to look around the world to bring more revenue in, and they realize, and they're starting to realize, that it's just not out there, and they're not bringing enough in. And they're going to try to do everything they possibly can to keep this system going. And this is why they're out in the Middle East, in Africa, in the Ukraine, in Bosnia, in Thailand, in many other places, trying to keep the empire of the United States continually going. And of course, this is the central bankers also, where they control pretty much everything. And you can call them the globalist elite, whatever you like to call them. And this is why they are trying to get into Syria and into Iran, and they're trying to get into the Ukraine. They're trying to get Bosnia to join up to the EU. And they are continually doing this to prop the dollar up, because if they can get into these countries, they can spread the debt out and issue more U.S. dollars to keep the system going. And this was their plan all along. This is why they went into Iraq, Lebanon, Libya. This is why they're in the Sudan. This is why, and there's other reasons which I discuss in my other reports. This is why they're in Mali. This is why they're in Central Africa. This is why they're in all of these places. And the whole idea of this climate resilience fund, the idea of it is something that should be, and we expect will be, supported across all parts of the country. It is the need to be prepared, the need to take steps that help our farmers and businesses and communities deal with consequences from severe weather events, is evident to everyone across the country. And of course, they're playing this up, saying, the severe weather, we have to be prepared, we have to help the farmers. But this is all BS, and this is all them sugarcoating it so they can tax every single person. And that's really what it comes down to. They just want the money, but they have to let everyone know this is why they're really doing it, which is absolutely false. Okay, now we all understand that the United States is provoking North Korea. We understand they provoke Iran, they provoke Syria, they provoke China, they provoke Russia, and right now they're on the warpath to get into North Korea, and they would like to see a regime change and put a puppet government in there. That's what they would really like to do. They're doing the same thing to Syria, and also they did it to Libya. They went in there, they removed the government, put a puppet regime in there, and they were able to sell all the natural resources using the U.S. dollar. They did it in Iraq, they did it in Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, you name it, they're doing it. And here, what they're doing in North Korea right now is that the UN has come out with a report. And again, this is a report about war crimes that the leader of North Korea has committed, and we've seen it on the news. I don't know how true they are, but the UN has not yet confirmed the report's accuracy. But North Korea's UN mission in New York has rejected the report's finding. And a U.S. official, speaking anonymously, of course, as they always do, also said that they believe that this report is true. And of course they do, because they believe the one against Assad is true. They believe every single report that they issue is true, because their whole goal, their whole entire goal has always remained the same: to get into these countries. They don't care if they can get into them. They will replace the leader and put a puppet regime in there, and then start using the U.S. dollar as the main currency, make loans out within the country, establish a private Western central bank inside the country. The same thing's happening in Syria, and now it's in North Korea. This is why you see all this provoking. And of course, during the times that the United States was letting us know that North Korea can fire a nuclear missile and hit the United States, North Korea was making deals with Iran, it was making deals with China, it was making deals with Russia, and all these deals that they were making was to bypass the US dollar. And we can see how what they're doing right now, they are approaching the situation, trying to use the UN, and if you really look, they're doing the same thing with Syria. They're using the UN to say that Assad has committed war crimes, and they're trying to get in there and they're trying to remove the government there. In the Ukraine, same thing. They have protesters rioting there saying that they want the EU, they want the EU. They're trying to remove the government there, and they're trying to replace it and put a puppet government in there because they want Ukraine to join NATO, and they want to put them on the US dollar as the reserve currency and spread the debt even further. And this is the whole game plan that they have here. And they understand there will be a time when they can't push this anymore, and war will break out because things will start to collapse. And I believe we're starting to see a little bit of this now with the stock market going up and down, and the way they're trying to continually push in every single location, and more countries are being added on where the United States is bringing more and more troops into these areas just to maintain what we have, and it's getting much more difficult as time goes on. And as we can see, we have the pivot to Asia. They are bringing military assets to Asia, to the Asian region, and we can see Japan is trying to change their constitution, Article 9, so they're no longer a pacifist nation where they're able to declare war if they need. Japan has built a new warship, and it's the first warship since World War II. The United States is moving the base from Okinawa to a new location to bring in more sophisticated weapons, and lo and behold, right now, Tokyo suggests that it would allow the U.S. to bring in a nuclear weapon, and they're allowed to bring it into the Japanese territory in the event of a serious threat to its security. So we can see what is happening right here. They're moving the base to a different location so they can bring in more sophisticated weapons. Well, I would say a nuclear weapon is much more sophisticated, and they realize they are setting all this up because they need all these weapons and these military assets in certain locations because they understand when World War III starts, they will need everything positioned. And this is why I talked about yesterday, we were in United States central bankers are in Africa because they realize the raw materials they need to build weapons, electronics, to build ships are in Africa, and they'll no longer be able to get these raw materials from China and Russia. And there's many other reasons why they're in Africa, but that was the one I mentioned yesterday in the report. And if you'd like to go back, you can take a listen to that. That's episode 290. Now, Kerry went on to say that the United States neither recognizes nor accepts China's declared East China Sea air defense zone, and the United States has no intention of changing how we conduct operations in the region. We are deeply committed to maintaining the prosperity and the stability in the Asian Pacific area, and that won't be possible without respect for international law, including freedom of navigation and overflight. So they're going to continually provoke China, and eventually something will occur down the line. And we can see that eventually, as things heat up, something will happen, war will start. I mean, right now we're looking at Syria, we're looking at Iran, we're looking at the Ukraine, where there's many different hot spots where something could break out. Now, when we look at Syria, we see the Geneva II talks have gone absolutely nowhere because the whole agenda was to remove Assad, put a transitional government in there. And right now, the opposition leaders, these are the paid mercenaries of the United States government, have said that there's no reason for us to even come back to the talks because you guys don't want to talk about the transition of the government. So right now, pretty much the opposition is completely out. But the president is out there saying that he's going to consider further steps to put pressure on the regime of the President Assad in Syria. And Obama said that both leaders recognize that we can't just treat the symptoms of the crisis. We're also going to have to solve the underlying problem, and that is a regime led by Assad needs to be removed. And we can see this is the agenda all along. It was the agenda back in August when they did the false flag event. It is still the agenda now. It's the same agenda in Iran. It's just being masked by these nuclear peace talks. But while everyone's looking at the nuclear peace talks, in the background, we have the IMF infiltrating the banks of Iran, trying to set interest rates. We also have Russia in there making deals with Iran on their economic status and trying to create deals. And we'll have to see who gets in and infiltrates the banks first. And if the IMF, the central bankers, cannot get in there and put the natural resources on the US dollar, this deal will completely fall apart. And we have to remember, this P5+1 deal is masked in secrecy, because right now the document is unclassified, but you cannot just look at it. You need to sign in. You have to have certain clearances. You're not allowed to copy it. You're not allowed to bring your phone in there. And we can see that something else is going on. But when this whole thing goes south, we can see that things will change very, very quickly. And again, the goal is always the same. They would like to change the government and put it in a puppet regime, but in Iran's situation, they're trying to infiltrate the banks to put their natural resources on the US dollar as the reserve currency, and we'll have to see how that goes out as time goes on. But with Syria, what's happening there is they're trying all different ways of getting in there to remove Assad. They've tried going through the war crime thing. This is why the propaganda about war crimes was being built up, and they had these reports, but there was no proof. Right before the Geneva II talks, they tried to say they're going in for humanitarian aid, and they had a draft of a UN resolution that said Assad committed war crimes, that's why we need to go in for humanitarian aid, and Russia said absolutely not. If we sign this, this shows that Assad has committed war crimes, and there's no proof of that, and they said they would veto this, and of course this was shot down, and that didn't go any further. But we have to remember, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel have paid these mercenaries to go into Syria and to cause this destruction. And we paid these people to do this. Now, the United States paid for this, and they're paying for this war. Now the United States is also paying for the humanitarian aid of $1.7 billion. So we paid billions upon billions of dollars to create this mess, and now we're paying billions and billions of dollars to help the people that this mess is hurting. So, and this is all to remove Assad, to put the US dollar as the reserve currency, and to put a puppet regime in Syria. And this is what's happening right there. So Saudi Arabia has decided to give the Syrian rebels anti-aircraft missiles. And this is in preparation for a new strike into Syria, because we understand that the United States, the central bankers, are going to try everything possible to get into Syria. And when this doesn't work, they're going to use a false flag event. They tried a false flag event back in August of 2013 with this chemical attack. And that didn't work. And this is why we saw the propaganda come out about biological weapons, about chemical weapons that Assad has hidden in the Alawite section of Syria. And now they're saying that there's Al-Qaeda in Syria, terrorists, homegrown terrorists, returning back to the United States, and some are already here in the country. They've been radicalized, and they could, these people could do some type of terrorist act within the United States. They might even have the biological and chemical weapons here in the United States right now. And this is the propaganda they're using, because they're building up the false flag event that is coming, because they realize, and they've learned, that they cannot have a false flag event in Syria because the American people just don't care about it. They will not go to war because of that. But if an event happens here in the United States, that is a different story. And this is why in the last month or so, you've seen so many cyber attacks from the Syrian Electronic Army, if they really do exist, against PayPal, eBay, Forbes, the latest one, the New York Times, CNN, because they're trying to build this propaganda up that they have the technology and the ability to hit and cause havoc if they really wanted to. And as this thing progresses, you're going to see more cyber attacks, you're going to see more propaganda, and we will have some type of an event here. And Saudi Arabia right now is helping out and supplying the rebels out there with more weapons. The United States has sent weapons. Of course, Congress did this behind closed doors in secrecy and passed a bill where they allowed aid to pass, and they are sending weapons which are already arrived in Syria to help the rebels overthrow Assad. And again, this battle's been going on for almost 3 years now, and it has gone nowhere, and this is why they have to take it to the next step. This is why they took it to the next step in August. That didn't work out, and they're going to try again. Now, the National Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, H.R. 3696, was introduced in Congress as the power grid attacks of 2013 finally filtered into the American consciousness. The cybersecurity legislation is supposed to allow communications integration centers within the Department of Homeland Security to offer real-time cyber threat information. And what's happening right now is DHS is pretty much taking over all cyber activity. They're the ones who are going to protect the U.S. from these cyber attacks. And again, this allows them to have full control, because they'll need full control when, depending on which agency commits the cyber attack on the United States. And this way, no other agency, no other force can report what is actually happening, because DHS is in complete control of what is going on. But on February 11th, cyber hackers exploited the weakness of the network time protocol system that keeps most of the computers with Windows and many servers all sync their time up from a central location, and apparently the network time protocol system was cyber attacked. And again, not knowing what time it is was not the downside of the successful hack. The cyber terrorists were able to send a massive amount of data to servers which could introduce malicious attack on online networks. And we can see these cyber attacks are ramping up now, because they need the American people to understand that these attacks are dangerous. They can take out the power grid. They could take out financial institutions. They can steal your information, because when the doomsday cyber attack hits, they need everyone to understand that this hurt the economy. It brought the financial institutions to its knees, and this was all because of Syria, because of North Korea, because of China, depending on the nations that they choose to do this with. And now there is propaganda out there, again, with North Korea about cyber attacks. And again, they have the UN report going and being discussed about war crimes against North Korea, and now North Korea's effort to build a cyber army that can conduct a string of attacks on neighboring states has experts asking some key questions. Is North Korea gearing up for a cyber assault on the United States? And again, they're building this propaganda completely up. And this goes on to say, we should never underestimate North Korea's willingness to engage in dangerous and provocative behavior to extract more aid and concessions from the international community. And this is from Representative Mike Rogers. He is the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. And this goes on to say that they are saying quite publicly they have several thousands men and women working on a daily basis on cyber attacks. And again, we have to remember that Mike Rogers has his CISPA bill pending right now in the Senate. That's passed the House, but it is pending in the Senate. And Rogers still hopes to see the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, which has passed the House and now pending in the Senate. And what it will do, it will allow greater information sharing between the government and private companies to prevent and respond to cyber attacks, but critics say it will give the government greater ability to monitor citizens' internet communications and to have full control of the internet. Now, we have to remember that the president just signed a new cyber infrastructure type of law, which is now voluntary for companies will volunteer their information to the government. Now, we have to think back. The president actually said that he would veto the CISPA bill if it came to his desk. But he went ahead and he created this infrastructure executive order, And he's saying that it is now voluntary for all businesses to share their information, and CISPA makes it mandatory for them to do this. He also created the executive orders to support the cybersecurity, to support CISPA. So how possibly is he going to veto this when everything that he is doing supports CISPA? And again, as we see these cyber attacks continuously coming, we will eventually see a bigger one where they'll say, listen, it's come to the point where we need to pass CISPA. We have all the executive orders created. We have the infrastructure system, which is voluntary right now. We should make it mandatory, so let's just pass CISPA, because we have to remember they want to take control of the entire internet, and that is what their main objective is. And they want control over pretty much everything. They don't like that the internet is like the Wild West, free and open, because they control the money supply, they control the corporate media, and they need to control the internet. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.